Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. Canonical issues on gelatin. Scenario number 1. Now here, before going into scenario number 2, there are just 2 or 3 small points I wanted to mention in relation to scenario 1. Let's just quickly go through it. Although, yes, assuming you know it's vegetative in origin, it's deemed, the gelatin is deemed tahir, and it is permissible to consume. That we covered. But if you have doubt as to whether the origin is vegetative or of animal origin, here, what do we have to do here? We said we have to exercise the asalatul hilliya, the principle of presuming it to be halal. Why? Because of traditions that have guided us. And the Sharia, through these traditions, the fuqaha have extrapolated this principle that whenever there are two foods, and there are two possibilities in relation to something, in this case gelatin, one possibility is halal, the other possibility is haram, you can presume it to be halal and eat it. And that's the case here. Let me just go through the traditions. In one tradition, it states that كل شيء لك حلال حتى تعرف أنه حرام. All things are halal for you until you acknowledge that they are haram. So there it's very explicit. You can presume it to be halal until you're certain that it's halal. It's haram. This is the tradition from which as-salatul hilliya is extracted from. From which, yes. Now, another tradition, it says, كل شيء فيه حلال وحرام فهو لك حلال. In all things, which in these things, it may be halal or haram, for you it's halal. حتى تعرف حراما منهم بعينه, until it's acknowledged before you that it is in fact haram. بعينه, that you see that it is haram, that you have this certainty, you have yaqeen now that it is haram. So the two traditions are almost the same. I don't want to, my translation may have not been 100%, but what the traditions are saying, that whenever you encounter a food, you can presume it to be halal until you have certainty that it is haram. Now here we encounter gelatin, we have a doubt. These two traditions help us to sort out, to encounter this doubt that we have acquired. The doubt involved two possibilities. One was halal, one was haram. Since one was halal, we can presume it to be permissible. We can presume it to be halal, this food that we are doubting, and therefore we can consume it from a Sharia's point of view. This much we said in the first talk. There's just one final point. We did say in relation to the mushtabahat, the things that there's some doubt in relation to them, such as this gelatin. We did say that here it's better to refrain, as the traditions have ordered us, but it's not obligatory to refrain. It's better to refrain. And as I mentioned in the first talk, spirituality is a function of one's intentions, and one is making that extra endeavor here for Allah's sake, and it's a good thing to do. Now, one question may arise, which I forgot to mention in the first talk, and that's this: that let's say, okay, the Sharia says you're allowed to consume it, and you do, and then later you find out actually it was haram. Okay? Would that be a sin? No. Would it affect you spiritually? There are different perspectives. I don't want to go too deep into this now, but the principle you have to always take in mind is that spirituality is a function of your intentions. You didn't intend to do something haram. Actually, your intention that when you ate the gelatin was based on the principles of the Sharia in this particular scenario. As-salatul hilliya. So you ate it. Later it was found that gelatin was of the porcine genre, from the pig. Here, okay, you found this later. You didn't know at the time. And that's okay, because spirituality is a function of your intentions. Those traditions which speak of, let's say, alcohol polluting one for X, Y, Z number of days, that's when you drink the alcohol or the haram food in general intentionally, not when you do it unintentionally. And that's a position which many scholars have. I'm not saying everyone has this, but that's a different discussion altogether. So that's that. Now, in this next scenario, scenario number 2, here, the issue is this, that in the ingredients section, for example, you're somewhere in a non-Muslim country and you read the term at the back of the pack of pastels, for example, or in the ingredients section, you read the term porcine gelatin, okay, which means gelatin extracted from a pig. Now, what is the course of action here? Well, the first question one has to ask is that, is the mere label, the mere writing, in the ingredients section, is it deemed as proof for the duty bound? Would that be considered as proof? And then you have to abide by it. Now, according to first principles in fiqh, things that are written don't constitute canonical proofs. Okay? They don't constitute Sharia proofs. Now, whether you're in a Muslim country or even in a whether in a non-Muslim country or even in a Muslim country, these writing labels and all these kind of things, they're not proofs for you. The Sharia hasn't recognized this form of communication as a proof. Now, if it leads to your certainty, that's another issue. Okay, everyone to their own, and it may lead to someone's certainty. I don't want to discuss that, but the writing per se is not considered as a proof according to the Sharia. Now, sometimes it's possible that you enter a shop, you see that in the ingredients section it says porcine gelatin, then you say, okay, is this true or not? Can I trust them or not? Can I use this as a canonical proof or not? Can I base my actions on this or not? Many times it's been asked, for example, that if I go to a supermarket such as Tesco's, for example, it exists in the UK, and in Tesco's I see this chicken or something else, or beef, for example, and then it writes on the container, it writes that halal. It is, for example, it says halal chicken. Can we trust that piece of writing? And the fuqaha say no, the writing itself alone does not constitute proof for you. I mean, if it was in a Muslim supermarket, okay, that's okay. If it was in a souq, as they say in Arabic, it was in a shop or a market where the owner is Muslim, or if it was in a Muslim country, for example, or if it was under Muslim hands. Not every souq constitutes yad. Yad means hand. It means where the Muslim has control over the making of this food, for example. That's different. For example, you go to someone's house, a Muslim's house, that Muslim has control over the food that is put before you. You don't have to investigate anymore. You can treat that yad, that Muslim hand, as proof. There's no need to investigate. Or if you go to a Muslim supermarket or a shop owned by a Muslim, that's proof in itself. The Sharia has regarded these different things as proofs. But writing per se isn't proof. Unless it's in a Muslim shop, for example, that will be okay. And that's because it's in a Muslim shop. Or if it's under Muslim hands. for example, in Emirates, that's not a shop, but there's Muslim authority, there's Muslim hands governing the procedure of the provision of food there. There, even if on the menus it doesn't write all the foods are halal, even then, there you can consume the food there because it's under Muslim hands. Yad. Yad is regarded as a proof, a canonical proof. So is the Muslim souq, Muslim markets, shops which are owned by Muslims. That's also regarded as a canonical proof. But writing per se, no. That's not a proof here. You can't, accept it 100%. You can't use it as proof. Now, if that writing leads to your yaqeen, your certainty, that's another issue. I'm not covering that here now. But the writing per se, it should not be considered as proof in the domain of the Sharia. So in the same way that when we say Tesco's has chicken and it's halal chicken because it writes it's halal, in the same way you don't trust or you don't accept the mere writing, the mere labeling in that scenario, here too. One can say that here, just because you encounter something writing porcine gelatin, you don't have to accept it. It's not canonical proof here. Okay, so the first principles here is that merely writing or labeling something is not considered proof. Now, you're in the West, let's say you're in the States, and it writes porcine gelatin. Do you have to accept it? No. You can't accept it. Okay, it's not one of the Sharia proofs. But the thing is, what happens is that sometimes you may feel that you're sure it is porcine, you're certain it is porcine gelatin, not because of the writing, because you know that there's no incentive for that company or whatever to lie, or actually because they'll be punished, they'll be sued or something for lying. You know that they don't lie. You don't deem it probable that it be of a vegetative type of gelatin when it writes porcine gelatin. Okay, if that's the case, okay, it's not that you should accept the writing per se. It's just that because of other external parameters, it has led to you acquiring certainty that this written porcine gelatin is in fact, you're certain it is gelatin of the porcine type. Because there's no incentive for them to lie. You're sure that that's the case. For some people, they may not trust them. That certainty may not be acquired. And in such a case, they don't have to treat it as being porcine gelatin. And therefore, if they deem it probable for it to be vegetative, as-salatul hiliyah will be exercised here also. But if that certainty is there, because they don't lie, they'll be sued if they do, there's no incentive for them to lie, and so on and so forth, this labeling of that porcine gelatin being written, that would constitute proof, Sharia proof for you, and then you can act accordingly. Otherwise, if you're not certain and you do deem it probable, albeit 5% or 10%, that it may be vegetative, because it's that mere writing is not Sharia proof for you, then it won't be constituted as proof. You don't have to treat it. And therefore, since you do deem it probable for it to be vegetative, you can exercise as-salatul hiliyah and therefore consume it. But what happens usually, and I want to continue in the next talk inshallah from this point, that let's assume now that you're certain it is porcine gelatin. Okay, as I said, you don't have to accept it, but let's assume now you've acquired certainty that it is porcine gelatin. What is the ruling here? Inshallah, I'll cover that in the next talk. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala tahirin.